Hello everyone, and welcome to a deck tech of Teysa Orzhov Scion, brought to you by the Trinisphere. I'm Adam, otherwise known as Squire on the Trinisphere, the local Johnny, and I'm going to take you through a deck tech of my recently developed Teysa Orzhov Scion deck. I have it posted on Tapped Out under my profile. And you can check it there. I am Squire1 on Tapped Out, so you can check it out. So we are going to go through the couple categories that I have mapped out on here. This is basically built to be a black-white tokens deck. A little bit of combo potential in here, but not a ton. Mostly just high synergies. So we have our token generators. We got 35 of those, as you can see. Removal, ramp, draw, other, which are typically just going to be our lands, support, and combo pieces. So let's first take a look at Teysa Orzhov Scion. The idea here is that Taissa allows you to sacrifice white creatures to remove target creature from the game. So it's a very removal heavy strategy, and its win con is basically going wide with tokens and or being able to wipe out everything on the board that the opposition has in order for you to take advantage and overrun your opponents. Every time a black creature dies, you get a 1/1 flying spirit token, white flying spirit token. You can sacrifice 3 white creatures to remove target creature from the game. So we're going to lean very heavily on our commander with this for our removal piece of the strategy. Let's take a look first at our token generators. So these are organized in converted mana cost. First we have Westvale Abbey, which does allow us to make 1/1s for a pretty stiff cost. However, the real thing here is if we do get enough tokens out, we're able to flip this into Ormondal, and this becomes a win con of its own. It's a 9/7 flying lifelink indestructible with haste. So theoretically, we have 5 tokens out. We play this land, pop it. You automatically have a big bad 9/7. Next up, we have Secure the Waste. Nice instant speed with Taissa out. If you pay 7 into this, you're able to remove 2 creatures right away by exiling them. Or you can just play this for going super wide, chump blockers, whatever you need to, because it's instant speed. Doomed Dissenter gives you 2 black creatures, essentially, because when it dies, it gives you another black creature. So each time one of those dies, either Doomed Dissenter or the zombie token, you're going to get a 1/1 flyer with Taissa. Handwear Militia Captain we have in here as something that's fairly easy to flip. It's a bear, which isn't very good in EDH, but when it does flip, we get an additional 1/1 every turn, plus a body that's potentially fairly large in Westvale Cult Leader. Martial Coup kind of doubles up in the removal and the tokens, so if we're able to remove the board, get at least 5 or 6 soldier tokens, and then play Taissa out, we'll be able to control the board as everything continues to move forward in the game instead of just board wipe and then pass the turn for everybody to have everything else. Curse of Disturbance allows us to have a little bit of a political play, because every time the enchanted player is attacked, you get a zombie token, and whoever's attacking them gets a zombie token. So if I attack them, I'm going to get a zombie token. And if one of my opponents attacks that person, they get a zombie token and I get one. Okay? Because whenever that enchanted player is attacked, I get a zombie token. So, then every time one of those zombie tokens dies, with Taissa, I get a 1/1 flyer. So we're basically just trying to maximize how we can get as many triggers as possible off of Taissa. Flesh Carver, same thing. When this dies, it replaces itself with a black creature. that could be very small and negligible, or it could be large depending on what we end up doing, sacrificing some of our other creatures. So this is a sack outlet, which allows us to kill our black creatures like Doomed Dissenter to trigger Teysa for 1/1s and then make this bigger. Or if this just ends up dying as a chump blocker, then we still end up with a 2/2 black creature and we continue on. And those are 2 black creatures that we can use. Lingering Souls is just great value. For 4 mana, we're going to end up getting for 5 mana, we're going to end up getting 4 creatures out of this. And you can play this early and then play it again later on. It gives you the white creatures that you're able to sacrifice to Teysa. As you'll see later, those white creatures can kind of have a dual purpose when we get to the combo aspect of this. Twilight Drover, solid in any token deck where we have white available, because whenever a token dies, this is going to get bigger. We can remove the +1/+1 counters that get put onto it to put 2 white spirit tokens with flying into play. So that allows us to kind of recycle when a token dies, triggers Teysa, we get a 1/1, plus this gets a +1/+1 counter. We can pay 3, get 2 other guys, and then sacrifice all 3 of the guys that we earned from that in order to exile something. Arielle, Knight of Windgrace. This is one of the looser adds. It is a 4/4 for 4 with Vigilance, which isn't horrible. We're not really going to get a whole lot of value off of the Knight piece of this, but it is a consistent form of us being able to pump out creatures. It does pump out white creatures, which we can sacrifice to Taissa again, but not the strongest card in here. It's a little bit on the slow side, but it can block an attack on its own, which is pretty decent. Amiria Angel. Every time you play a land, you're going to get a 1/1 bird with flying. So we've got more in the air, more swarm going on. This is a white creature. It creates white creatures, able to sack to Teysa. Kalitas, however you want to say it, Trader of Get. This acts as somewhat removal because you can remove the things that are going to the graveyard. But in addition to that, you end up getting black zombie tokens out of it. So those black zombie tokens will then act as chump blockers that feed Teysa, etc., and the cycle goes on. It is also a sack outlet for any of our zombies to make it bigger. It has lifelink, 3/4 lifelink for 4, not too bad. Liliana's Reaver. This is, again, a little bit loose because it's a 4/3 for 4, but it does have Death Touch, so you can almost treat that as a form of evasion. It blocks very well, obviously, but you want it to be dealing combat damage because then you get black zombies off of it. And the more zombies that we get, then the more blockers we have and or attackers, and then more Teysa triggers. Marsh Flitter is a 1/1 flyer for 4, but it comes in with 2 other 1/1 flyers that are both black. So 3 power flying for 4, not the worst. The last ability about sacrificing a goblin is not relevant in the deck at all. This is really just here to make 3 black bodies that can potentially block and give 3 Teysa triggers, turning them into 3 1/1 white tokens that we can use to sacrifice and exile something. Singer Autocrat works in a couple different ways. First of all, you end up with 4 bodies for 4. They're all black, and so they're all going to trigger Teysa when they die, giving you 1/1s, which is great. Nice conversion on that. But in addition to that, when it leaves the battlefield, it dies, but then all the tokens die too. So it's a little bit of risk because originally printed, this said to bury all the surf tokens, which would mean that they go to the graveyard and they trigger Teysa. In this case, it now says exile all surf tokens. So it's a little bit of a risk because if Singer Autocrat dies and you have the surf tokens still out, you can lose a little bit of value off that. Sorin, Lord of Innistrad, works on 2 axes. First, it makes black tokens, which is great because that feeds Teysa. But on the other side of that, it also, if you minus it, makes your creatures permanently have +1/+0. So if you're getting to a point where you've stabilized, where the board is kind of yours, but all you have is 1/1s out, you can start making them 2/1s or 3/1s or what have you, in order to attack with a little bit more volume and power. SRAM's Expertise. 3 guys for 4, which is fine, but then it also allows you to play one of your smaller creatures as well. Anything with a casting cost of 3 or less for free. Tombstones Stairwell. Tombstones Stairwell is one of my favorite pieces in this. Basically, everybody during each upkeep is going to get 2/2 tokens equal to the number of creatures in their graveyard. So every turn, on everybody's turn, so if you're in a 4-person pod, you've got 4 turns before you have to pay the cumulative upkeep that you're going to get, or 3 turns before you pay the cumulative upkeep, that you're going to get some number of 2/2 black creatures. Okay? At the end of each turn, you bury all those tokens. Okay? So they hit the graveyard, they trigger Teysa. You're just getting tons of value out of this. If you pay the upkeep even once for 2, then you're going to get even more value. So really strong card here, very interesting. It does create a whole bunch of attackers, but it creates attackers where hopefully you'll have just as many as anybody else, so you can block. So it's not really hurting you at all. Angel of Invention. So on top of being an anthem, so that all of your tokens are bigger, it also makes tokens. So it can make 2 tokens, or it can be kind of a big beater and a finisher on its own, because it is flying, lifelink, and vigilance. For 5 mana, very good card to have in here. Cloud Goat Ranger. Okay. I put Cloud Goat Ranger in here and don't think that there's any kind of Kithkin sub-theme here. We get a 3/3 and 3 1/1s for 5. So you get 6 power and toughness across 4 bodies for 5. That's it. I'll probably sacrifice Cloud Goat Ranger at some point to Taissa in order to exile something else. Endrick Sar Master Breeder. So this is, again, just for playing creatures, which I have quite a few in the deck. I'm getting more black creatures. When I have 7 or more, I have to sacrifice them. So I'm going to look for ways to get rid of those black creatures, which in turn is going to trigger Taissa. So this kind of starts a little bit of an engine. I don't have a lot of sack outlets, but I have a couple in here. As you've seen, we could sacrifice things to the Flesh Carver. Other than that, we're probably just attacking with them or blocking with them, to get rid of them. We can also sacrifice them to Gisa Ghoulcaller, which we'll get to in a minute. But next, or Ghoulcaller Gisa rather, next is Geist Honored Monk. So again, this is very similar to the Cloud Goat Ranger. We're paying 5, and we're getting a 3/3 and 2 1/1s for 5 mana. So 5 power across 3 bodies for 5 mana, at least. Geist Honored Monk might have a higher power depending on what else we have out. But that's still pretty decent. I mean, right there, that's a removal spell. It's an exile creature. Ghoulcaller Gisa. We can sacrifice any of our creatures to make more black creatures. So this can kind of go cyclically and make more and more zombies as we go. Every time you sacrifice one of the zombies, you're going to get 2 back. It's a 3/4 for 5, not that great. It's a little bit on the slow side. I do like her. I think it works well. Increasing Devotion, similar to Secure the Waste. This is just going to put lots of little dudes out on the field. If you actually get up to the 9 mana that you need to flash it back, then you're going to get tons of dudes out on the battlefield. I don't generally plan on the flashback. 9 mana is a lot. If you're that late in the game and the best thing that you have to do is Increasing Devotion for 10 guys, it's probably not that great of a play. But if you have nothing else going on, then it's definitely a strategy. Scion of Vitu-Ghazi. So 4/4, and at the very least 2 1/1s with flying for 5. So again, 6 power across 3 bodies for 5 mana. not bad. If we happen to have a better token out, even if it's a 2/2 or something, then we can populate that instead of the 1/1 white flyer, but it's pretty decent as it is. And again, all these tokens, all these white tokens seem to be in the air, so we possibly have that attack advantage of having a lot of evasion. And then some of these ground creatures that they come with, like Scion, we can use as sack fodder after we block something to exile one of their creatures or something else. Siphon Flesh. So obviously removal, but in addition to removal, you're guaranteed to have some amount of black creatures that you get out of it. In a 4-person pod, you're paying 5 to get 3 zombies and have each of your opponents sack a creature. If played correctly, that means that you're having an advantage of 6 things in your favor. Okay? You're getting 3 things, they're losing 3 things collectively. So for 5 mana, I think that's a pretty decent swing, especially since it's making tokens that we're going to want to block with or do something with in order to trigger Teysa for even more shenanigans later. Wingmate Rock, it's a little bit of casual life gain. It's not the best. Triggering the raid is not hard in this because we have a lot of flyers. We also have just a lot of little things that we don't care if they end up dying. So getting 2 3/4s for 5, not the worst thing in the world. However, getting a whole bunch of 3/3s and being able to blow up all the big stuff, because as you've seen, we have a lot of 1/1s and 3/3s and things like that. Elspeth's Sun's Champion is going to be some premier removal and token generation in this deck. If you get to alter, which I never plan on alting walkers because it's just not something that happens, then you're clearly going to be in a winning position because all of your 1/1s and 2/2s now turn into 3/3s and 4/4s. They all have flying. It's going to be very easy to win from that position. But just being able to spit out 3 guys every single turn, or when you first put it out, blow up most of the things on the board that don't belong to you, that's pretty good advantage off of Elspeth. Grave Titan is probably the best token generator in the deck. For 6 mana, you're going to end up with a 6/6 Death Toucher and 2 2/2s. So a total of 10 power for 6. And then when it attacks, you continue to get more zombies. This is a fantastic token generator. If you have any kind of black tokens deck, this should go in there. It's a great card. Requiem Angel. We're going to assume that a lot of our stuff dies. Now, a lot of our stuff is our spirit tokens, and so that's not going to trigger Requiem Angel. But everything that's not a spirit token, even the bird tokens and things like that, are going to trigger this. And every time one of those dies, we get a 1/1 spirit token, which we can then sacrifice to Taissa to exile things. This is a huge token generator in this deck, especially if you have something like Tombstones Stairwell out. You're going to get just lots of value off of this. It's fantastic. Okay, Skeletal Vampire. Again, kind of one of the weaker ones. More of a niche. I kind of like this card. It's a 3/3 for 6 with flying. That comes in with 2 flyers. So it's 5 power in the air for 6. Not the worst. Not the best either. It does allow you to sacrifice your creatures in order to make more creatures, which is great because we have a couple things that exploit creatures dying and getting more tokens off of them. So you can potentially get 3 or 4 tokens off of each one of these. But yeah, an interesting card in here. Thopter Assembly is just a big beater. And if you don't have any Thopters out already, it bounces back to your hand and you get a whole bunch of Thopters. They're colorless, so they're not currently triggering anything except for maybe Requiem Angel. So not the greatest, but we'll see later on that there are ways of working around that. Wormcoil Engine, same thing. First of all, Wormcoil Engine being one of the best finishers. It's a great EDH card. You get lots of value off of it, some casual life gain. It practically has evasion. it's a target right away. I mean, people are definitely going to try and get rid of it, but you can usually get some kind of advantage off of having Wormcoil Engine in there, and it makes tokens. Abhorrent Overlord makes tokens. It sacrifices tokens, and that's pretty much all we want it to do. Other than that, it's a 6/6 flyer. Makes more flyers, and it makes us sacrifice creatures, which is going to trigger Requiem Angel, Teysa, all kinds of things. Overseer of the Damned. When it enters the battlefield, it destroys a creature, so we've got some removal. And whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, you get a 2/2 zombie. So it makes tokens, it's removal, it's a big flyer. All around pretty good for this deck. We do have some other non-Teysa removal in here that is destroy based, so we can get more 2/2s off of that. As you saw with Martial Coup, we have other board wipes and things like that. So for removal, we have a couple of lands that are qualified as removal. The first is Blighted Fen. So we can pay 5 and have one person sacrifice a creature. Not that great unless they're left behind with something like, you blew up the board except for they still have their Eldrazi out. Well, okay. So that's still out, because it's just in Ulamog or something like that that's indestructible. So you're able to make them sacrifice that last creature if it had some kind of indestructibility to it. Otherwise, it just sits out there as a land. Yeah, it's a colorless land. It's not the strongest land in here. We also have the double team of Strip Mine and Wasteland. Now, I like to have these in almost every deck, and it's really just to deal with troublesome lands. Sometimes a Nykthos or a Gaia's Cradle or a Serra's Sanctum or a Maze of Ith or something is really becoming troublesome. I don't usually use these to actually attack a player's mana base unless I'm actually playing a land destruction deck. So this is really just to make sure that nobody has an unfair mana advantage. I'm going to make sure that we're kind of on equal footing. All right. Path to Exile. So Path to Exile is part of the normal suite that I would go with, along with Swords to Plowshares. These two are premium removal in white. We want to make sure that we have the best removal possible, and those are two of the best, both at instant speed. If we really needed to, we can always path one of our tokens in order to ramp. I don't like to do that, but it's something that we can do. Martial Coup, we already went over in the tokens, but it's also removal. Anguished Unmaking, probably the best Orzhov, black-white removal spell that we've ever seen. It's 3 mana at instant speed. Yeah, you lose 3 life. Who cares? You don't play it when you're on your last 3 life. But exile anything. Gets rid of walkers, creatures, Eldrazi, doesn't matter. Blade Splicer should be up with the tokens. Clearly my labeling was wrong. Blade Splicer is just another token generator. It's just 4 power for 3. Toxic Deluge is the best board wipe in black, in my opinion. It gets rid of anything with indestructible. It gets rid of really anything for probably like 5 life most of the time, maybe 6. It's a great board wipe, not a lot of mana investment, so you can play something down afterwards. Very good. Vindicate is a classic. Destroy target permanent. Again, you could use this on lands if you were up against something very troubling. Otherwise, it takes care of walkers, creatures, enchantments, things that you don't necessarily want to dedicate a full slot to. Maybe you don't want to put a disenchant in. You can put a Vindicate in, and it almost fills it. It's obviously not instant speed, but it's still very good. Utter End is the exile version of that. So for 1 more, we get exile at instant speed. But it's target non-land permanent, so you can't blow out people's lands with this. But it gets rid of pretty much anything else. Utter End has, at least in my play group, become pretty ubiquitous in black-white decks, or anything that has those colors. All right. Siphon Flesh we talked about a little bit before because it is a token generator. Austere Command, again, the versatility here is what I'm really after. It can get rid of artifacts, enchantments, and big creatures. Remember, we're planning on having primarily small creatures. If we lose one of our big creatures, it's not a big deal if we still have an army of little guys around. So Austere Command is pretty perfect for that. Elspeth, which we talked about up in the token section, but it has a great board wipe on it as well. Merciless Eviction gets rid of walkers, which can be difficult to do if you're playing against a Super Friends deck. Also, it exiles, and it's just a fantastic board wipe in these colors. Hour of Reckoning has Convoke, and it destroys all non-token creatures. So if we build up a token army, and we maybe tap some of our non-token creatures, because we know they're going to die anyway, to convoke this, then we can cast Hour of Reckoning probably for just 3 or 4 and blow out most people who aren't going with a token strategy. Overseer of the Damned, again, we saw this before. It does destroy a creature, but it also nets us some tokens. So now on to ramp. So not a ton in the way of pure ramp. I mean, we obviously aren't in green, so we don't have a lot of getting extra lands out and things like that. So we're depending on some different strategies. So we have Cabal Coffers, which, yes, we have the Urborg in here as well to make all of our lands swamps. We also have Cabal Stronghold to basically do the same thing. Doing Cabal Coffers into Cabal Stronghold when you have like 5 swamps out or an Urborg out with 5 lands can be very strong, nets you a lot of mana, puts you ahead of the game. Soul Ring is a pretty ubiquitous one in EDH. Corrupted Graftstone, not my favorite. It's a 2 mana rock, which I do like that aspect of it. It's better than a Charcoal Diamond or a Marble Diamond, in my opinion, because while it comes into play tapped just like those, it should, in most cases, allow you to make either white or black instead of just white or just black. So it does help out a little bit there, but still coming into play tapped, I'm not a huge fan. Mind Stone is great. Draws you a card if you sack it. Makes mana. Only costs 2 mana. It's fantastic. Orzhov Signet is a pretty obvious add to any Orzhov deck. Sword of the Animist, great to strap onto one of those 1/1 flyers so you can keep attacking in and just getting lands. This is one of the best ways to ramp in a deck like this for the mid to late game. Obviously, this isn't going to do it super early game because you have to pay 2 to put it out and then pay another 2 to equip it. And sometime you have to put a creature in there in order to do that. So it's a little on the slow side, but can generate you a lot of advantage. Boreas Charger, something great to sacrifice to Teysa and hopefully get some extra land out of it. I'm really just testing this card out. It's one of the new cards out of Commander 18, and I want to see what it can do. I mean, again, it's in the air. It does sack to Taissa. When it sacks to Taissa, it gets you some lands. So, you know, it might be worth. I'm not sure. Burnished Heart is a great one. Again, kind of like a mid-game ramp. You get a 2/2 for 3, and then you can sack it for 2 basic lands. So in the mid-game, if you just have that extra mana, or you're leaving up a blocker like Burnished Heart, then you can sack it. Similar to how you would do with a Sakura Tribe Elder. And the best blocker that ramps you also draws you cards. So Solemn Simulacrum, when it comes into play, you get a land. When it dies, you draw a card. Just great value all around. All right, card draw. We are really light on card draw in this deck. It's one of the few things that I'm actually worried about with the deck, and we'll have to see how it plays. So far in playtesting against my group and Goldfishing both, I haven't run into this being an issue because we're generating a lot of value off of the things that are already out. But card draw is a little weak in this deck, so we do need to be careful with that. So first up is Skull Clamp. We've got a whole bunch of 1/1s, and so when 1 mana and a 1/1 equals draw 2 cards, this card has to go in there. A lot of people make an argument for this card going in almost every EDH deck. I don't think I would go that far, but if you have a decent number of X1s or the ability to create X1s, I definitely put it in there. Or if you know that certain creatures are definitely meant to be chump blockers in your deck, then I could see it, but I don't put it in every deck. Mentor of the Meek, again, every time one of those creatures, one of our little tiny guys, comes into play, we can just pay 1 mana and draw a card. Very good value. He goes under a lot of our board wipes because he's only a 2/2. Solemn, again, draws you a card. All right, let's take a look at the rest of our mana base. So something that you're going to notice about the mana base is I have very few cards that come into play tapped. Some of this is a price thing for people, and by all means, you should go with the money that you have available to you. But I would rather play basic lands than play tap lands, so I try to avoid them at all costs. So Caves of Koilos, this is a pain land. Command Tower, the perfect land for any multicolor EDH deck. I think this is the only come into play tapped land. Crypt of Agadim. And this would probably be the first one that I would take out because I'm not planning on having a ton in my graveyard. There's another build that you can do of Teysa that's very Reanimator. And you have a lot of stuff in your graveyard. And I think this might be better there. So if I was going to take one out, I would just replace this with a swamp. Godless Shrine, Shockland, as per usual. The Checkland in Isolated Chapel. Our Fetch. 10 Plains. Reflecting Pool. Scrubland. Shizo, Death's Storehouse. I like this because, hey, it's a little extra value out of a swamp, essentially, right? You can potentially give Taissa Fear. Why that's important, I don't know. Maybe it becomes relevant at some point in the game. Otherwise, it's just an untap, black land. So, Iganjo might go in here. Iganjo also might be a good switch out for Crypt of Agadim. Because we already have a fairly even split. If it was a little bit in White's favor, it wouldn't be a big deal. 10 Swamps, Tainted Field, which most of the time you should have a swamp out with the even split that we have. So this effectively acts as a scrub land most of the time. And our Urborg to turn everything into a swamp. In addition to that, we have some just kind of support cards, one of which is a land. So we have Volrath's Stronghold, which allows us to do some creature recursion, which kind of, again, fights against the Crypt of Agadim a little bit. Whenever I put Volrath's Stronghold in a deck, I don't end up using it that much. I do use it, but it's really only to get back a critical piece. Like maybe it's late in the game and I don't really have much else going on, and I'm like, Grave Titans in my yard. I'll throw that back on top, and then it gives me 3 bodies right away. So, other support cards, Anointed Procession. So doubling all of the tokens that we're making is exactly what we want to do in this deck. Just create more and more tokens. We have a couple of recursion spells, one in Dread Return and one in Unburial Rites. Unburial Rites is just decently costed and in the right colors for us. Also, you get 2 uses out of it. Same thing with Dread Return. You get 2 uses out of it. One of the uses, you're able to sacrifice 3 creatures. If they're black creatures and you have Taissa out, then you get something back from the graveyard, plus you get 3 1/1s. So a little bit of a value play there. Revel in Riches is just one of those cards that I want to win with so badly that we're going to try and make it happen. Okay? We've got a lot of creatures dying. We want a lot of creatures to be dying. We're not afraid of blocking. We're not afraid of attacking. All we need is for 10 of them to die. 10 creatures opponents control to die. So we have to make that happen somehow. And with all the board wipes, I think we can do it. So we're going to try. And it's never going to happen. But look, we have to go for it. Because if a card says win the game on it, we have to play that. It's a must. Then we have the actual hot combo here. So Darkest Hour, 1 black for a card that says all creatures are black. So what does this really mean for us? So let's say that we have 3 black creatures out. We attack with them. Okay? They all die. We get 3 1/1 spirits from Teysa. But now all creatures are black. So those spirits can now continuously be recycled, because Taissa is just going to, every time they die, you're just going to get new ones because every single creature you have is black. Okay, so there's just like this constant engine of just, you're never going to run out of creatures if this thing is out. Okay, and I believe that all of those are white in addition, so you should be able to sacrifice them to Taissa also. But even if they're not, it's still great value. I'll look that up before we play the match. By the way, this is the deck that I'll be playing in episode 1 of Season 3 from the Trinisphere. Vampiric Tutor, Diabolic Intent are both basically just ways to get Darkest Hour, because it's just a good card, and that's what we need to have happen in this deck. So that's pretty much it. That is our Teysa Orzhov Scion deck. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and I hope that it inspires you guys to build it. If you have any hot tech on Teysa, then please let me know. I would love to hear about it. Comment below, and check us out. You can check us out on Facebook, or me, or any of the rest of the cast on Twitter. Follow us, share, like, subscribe on the YouTube, and you can catch us usually on Friday nights, either at the boarding party or on the Trinisphere, streaming our Friday night EDH games. So check us out there too. Until next time, guys, keep brewing.